Lateral movement containment is done in multiple vectors. And that's usually the problem for every business. When they start enabling protection, they start creating friction for their business. So the challenge you start running into is how do you make that not cause disruption? And there's great ways to do it. Zero Networks is doing that today. We block the primary ports. When I say block, we disallow someone that's unauthorized to communicate. But if me as an admin, a domain admin, it logs in and tries to gain access to this machine, and I verify I am Chris, who I say I am, then I gain access. So allowing a frictionless approach while friction's in place is how you continue business operations. And then the other part is understanding your full business operations. That's another reason, again, why Zero Networks is doing very well, is they're mapping out everything, they're learning over a period of time. That's why we're not an instant click button and run. We have to learn your business, we harden it, and we provide visibility. So to kind of answer the question for you, it could totally hurt your business. And that's why micro-segmentation and lateral movement containment has been a challenge. Usually it's just block it, a preventative, or react and respond, EDR, for example. So having it fully isolated to prevent a spread, it's an operational nightmare. And that's why companies like Zero Networks is popping up to solve that problem for companies. So when it comes to impacted machines or infected machines, the typical approach is when detected, quarantine and isolate so it doesn't spread across your environment. The question is what happens if it was already spread? CrowdStrike just used data analysis just last year. They looked at their data. They said the quickest spread they saw was 26 seconds, if I'm remembering that number correctly, to jump on your machine, assess what's going on, and then move laterally to a different machine. That's pretty quick. If you think about it, could an EDR respond in real time? I would hope so. That's what it's designed for. That's what it's supposed to be doing. But assume it looks like me, smells like me, acts like me. EDR is going to say it should communicate, and it's not going to block that. And that's the real challenge here. So how do you determine what is infected? It may be hard to know because most attacks nowadays are through a login and it looks like me and acts like me. It's not going to download a malicious payload right away. That's where you get flagged. So you act like a real user, then you cause the destruction after you disabled everything. So I would say it's not a simple approach, even though there's multiple tools out there on the market that helps do this. The main goal is learning and assessing what is going on in your environment, and then containing that what is really necessary. And that's where the terminology micro-segmentation starts coming in, is, hey, I, as a domain admin, am communicating to this database server. I never do that. If I verify who I say I am, it opens up privileged access just in time for me, and then it allows that communication, which will prevent a hacker from going in and bypassing my security measures. So it kind of isolates it, prevents the spread, while offering segmentation in place. Now, the most common way to avoid friction in a business is understanding the flow of your operations. Typically, as like an admin, I'll say, hey, you're developing this code, or you're working on this operation. What does it need to communicate to? Hopefully, they have an answer. They're the ones writing the code. Now, AI might be changing that conversation slightly. It might be an AI prompt saying, here's what we need to do. Ideally, you open up the flow in communication, and then it just starts working based on what you told me. The problem you run into is overprivileged access, or almost too much control. So unfortunately, you could say, I want to communicate to everything in this like network. And now everything can connect, and that's where you have spread, unfortunately. So attackers can gain access to everything in that network. So how do you avoid that friction is by learning and assessing everything that's happening in your environment, knowing what is actually communicating from application layer to the whole stack of endpoint to identity level, and then narrowing that down to the focus of what really matters. And then when necessary, it needs to communicate to a device or an application that you normally don't talk to, you should open it up and allow someone to communicate, which is a just-in-time access. And that just-in-time access can be done through your identity provider, through your conditional access, and then it gives me privilege to do what I need to do during that moment in time, while isolating what's in my environment. But when I see an endpoint compromise, most of the time I assume there's a ransomware, a malicious payload, a Trojan, something has happened on that device. And I'm already assuming the EDR or antivirus that's in place unfortunately didn't catch it, or it's been compromised itself. So now it's been exposed. Hopefully, in the typical scenario, it would have been isolated and fixed right away. But again, we're saying it has been compromised. The only way that's really been utilized in this space is encouraging the use of the framework of zero trust, or the zero trust mindset. And that means when someone's on this machine, you never trust but always verify. And that's where microsegmentation comes in, network isolation comes in, containment. So there needs to be a layer put in place to harden the exposure from spreading in your environment. If not, that compromise allows the communication to other devices. So we're assuming that they're on that machine, and it's bypassed everything. How did they move on? And that's why red teaming is so important. Give someone your domain credentials and a domain admin on that local machine connected to your network, and see how far they can go. And if they can keep spreading across your environment, you failed already. That means an attacker could do the exact same thing. If they have a friction right off the bat and they can't do anything, I think you're winning at this moment in time. And you can prove and justify, look, if someone did compromise and bypass all those millions of dollars I'm spending on security, this is how I can feel more successful of preventing a spread in my environment and taking down my business. So high value applications or services is usually, in my opinion, my first thought set is what my customers are consuming and utilizing, or my back-end engine is what I'm running my whole company off of. So that's usually where I go to. The other one, of course, authentication and elevated privileges, so your domain controllers, for example. So how do you define it and isolate that? Well, typically you harden it. You might put it in a DMZ if it's necessary, but customers are utilizing it. So I can't have it too hardened. I need to have external access. So now we're running into the common problem that everyone's running into. Everything is exposed. And it's not in a just interconnected web. It's all hosted on cloud platforms, intercommunicated. We're assuming I put the right security postures in place, but I have the possibility, an unfortunate possibility, that something can access my environment that I'm unaware of. So I usually want to prevent the spread of that information from being abused. So if I had a web application, or I had a consumer databases, and it's communicating and doing everything in the framework itself, what if something did have access to this, or someone, and how am I preventing it from going across my whole network? So I have to learn, assess it, understand its patterns, harden it, and then allow me to have access to it whenever I need to have access to it, while opening it up temporarily, which is like a just-in-time access. So that's the best practice, and that's where microsegmentation and the zero trust mindset is coming in for everyone looking at this kind of solution. So zero trust is a journey. It is not a single solution platform at all out there, but usually when you walk through that journey, there's multiple frameworks out there. I mean, NIST has one, and there's I think CISOs even has its own variation. There's open source frameworks, but the main thing is it always starts with assessing what you have, how you're doing business, and then where you're creating friction along the way to validate, to never trust but always verify through the whole entire communication flow. So you can start small. You can just start with the improvement of your identity posture, a slight hardening of endpoint security. You can start doing what you need to do, or you can look at solutions just like with Zero Networks. We're assessing everything for you automatically. We're hardening it based on your business. And this is all done frictionless and an agentless approach. So you don't actually have to redesign, buy new hardware, work on a completely new infrastructure in place. You add a segment server, which is what we do. We do line of sight, will gain access into the information of each asset. I'm talking application, identity, user itself, build out a whole map for you, for your whole company. It takes 30 days. And then boom, you're segmented that fast. So I can show you, and I have full confidence because I have customers that do this. You can be 100% segmented, pushing toward that zero trust journey all within 30 days. And that's pretty powerful.